hockey podcast, the Cats and Balls. 3, 2, 1.
Hey, thank you, Ben Castro. Welcome, everybody, to, as the man said, Florida's favorite hockey show. It is Season 2, Episode 17 of the Cats and Bolts podcast, coming to you from Podcast Junkies. And I do have messages from the Lightning fans. If we have time, I will actually read them verbatim. Otherwise, I'll have to paraphrase. I'm Rod. She's Sarina. We have a very special guest coming up later on in the program today. Bure1096, Nick Fairbanks from the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast is going to be joining us here live. He's been a regular participant, Sarina, for the last 2 years, right? Cool guy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Looking forward to having him here. And Doug McLean will be with us on set next week. So things are really picking up as we get down the home stretch of the NHL season. Yeah. How are you? What's in the... You feel like it's been a short week or a long week since we've been in here?
That's a great question. It feels like it's been 2 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know why.
Sure. Well, I feel like you know what? Here's where we're going to start. I feel like it's been a very, very long week, like a month. I've been dealing with a lot of people's complaints and a lot of crap. And so Connor from Tampa Bay is writing me with regards to our coverage of the Brayden Point situation. And we're going to get into that here right away. And he said the only time you talk about the Lightning is when it's negative on your show. And I'm like, incorrect. And I said, what exactly would you like to see on the show? And we didn't really have an argument over it, Sarina, but I'll get to that in a second. He goes, I would like to see more Bolts posts, whether it's stats, fights, streaks, maybe an interview with a current or ex-Lightning position player, radio, goalie coach, etc.
Holy fuck, go to ESPN, guy. Holy
We don't live in
shit.
Tampa. But hey, the thing was, I don't want to be a dick to the guy because he's watching and he's following. And when people want more of your content, you got to try to give it to them. But I appreciate that. I just wonder what your thoughts are.
No, I mean, we do, obviously. But here's the thing. We share what we can, but obviously it's not a full-time job for us, and there's so much coverage out there that when we share tweets like, why was Brayden Point a healthy scratch? It's to increase engagement and fan interaction. That's kind of the whole general principle of this whole thing. It's not necessarily, we're not going to be the guys that are like, trade deadline, this coming down the pipe. It's not really going to be like that, but appreciate the feedback. But we don't say negative stuff about the Lightning at all. I don't remember anything negative. I've been pumping their tires since the start of the start of the season.
He actually specifically brought up the Kucherov hit, which was when we were in the Keys the week of Christmas, right? And we didn't really take a side on that. But if you were, looking at it from a Lightning perspective, you might not have liked what we said or any Panthers fans. But anyways, Connor, I see you and I feel you, and we'll do what we can. Because he's been watching since last season, too, since we started this. He just wants more hockey coverage. He wants more of his team. He's proud of his team. He's proud of his town.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Talk about the Lightning.
So that's what we're opening up. This is kind of the next point. Pardon the pun, but Brayden Point was a healthy scratch in the Lightning's 6-2 loss at Boston on Tuesday night, which is all fine. I don't understand why the team needs to put that on Twitter that he's a healthy scratch because he missed a team meeting. I don't get it. And I wonder who's behind this. And then I see John Cooper come out after the game and say, we're professional sports. We have rules. No one's above the law. And nobody feels worse about this, I'm sure, than Pointer because he's a great team guy. And I'm like, then why is he missing meetings? The whole thing doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And it's not like he's a rookie, Sarina. It's not like this is a peewee hockey team. The whole situation seems weird to me.
Well, but again, it's like I was saying to you earlier today. I don't imagine he just didn't show up for the meeting and didn't tell anybody. There's protocols in place, like he said, like John Cooper said, there's rules. And if you don't abide by the rules, you fall under the punishment. He probably told them in advance, I've got this going on. I'm not going to be able to be at the meeting. It's like any of the rest of us who have a job where we go Monday to Friday, we are required to be at meetings. If we are not there, we pay the price, regardless of what it is. You don't get exceptions here and there. It's not the way it works. They're a professional sports team. They're not going to just let him do whatever. It's making a point of disciplining people the exact same way across the board, no matter what the circumstance. This is not a big deal. I don't know why everybody's... The Twitter thing was making way more of a big deal out of it than it actually was. I'm surprised John Cooper never said anything about that.
The whole thing's weird. Okay, I just feel like there's something weird going on with the Lightning. And Brayden Point, they've won a Stanley Cup with him. He's on Team Canada. John Cooper named him to his team. It's very heavy-handed, old-school discipline, which, by the way, I am in favor of, but I didn't think you could do that anymore. Is kind of my point.
Why not?
Because they whine and they cry and they pout.
But that's my point. That's my point. That is it right there. Number one, Brayden Point is not a crybaby. Number two, there was obviously already an interaction between them, him saying, hey, I can't be at this meeting today. I understand I have to take the discipline. It is what it is. So it's like everybody's making a big deal. What if he had to take his wife to the doctor or something? You know what I'm saying?
You don't get healthy scratched because you had to take your wife to the doctor.
If you miss a meeting, you miss a meeting.
Yeah, I think there's more to it than that. But
I don't. See, stop making more out of this shit than there really is. This is the problem because people are like,
you
oh,
actually
think
he was excused for a good reason and then turned around and got healthy scratch?
He wasn't excused.
He missed a meeting, period.
But it's not like he just didn't show up and they were calling his house. Hey, are you dead?
Sounds to me like that is what happened.
Does it? Because why?
Because we're having a meeting and where's Brayden Point? He's not here.
How do you know that happened?
Because that's what they said, Sarina. Do a little research. Did you read John Cooper's comments? Did you do any digging into this?
When would I have had the time to do the
so
digging
you don't
today?
know.
So then fucking fill me in on the conversation.
I've been trying for the last 5 minutes.
You have? Because you literally just read what I read. We had the conversation about it. When I had the conversation with you, I was like, this is probably what happened. You're like, I don't know. I'm sorry, I've been working all day. How the fuck would I know?
I'm just telling you, he was disciplined for missing a meeting. It wasn't taking his wife for an X-ray.
Oh my God, it was an example. It was a fucking example. I'm just using an example of somebody who might miss a meeting.
Okay, well, the whole point is here, nobody really seems to know. And I think it's, as I said earlier, a heavy-handed way to deal with things. Now you're ready to move on.
Okay.
By the way, welcome, Nick. What do you think so far? It's exactly what you expected, right? Paul Maurice, we did get a kick out of this. They lost here Saturday to the Boston Bruins in overtime at American Bank Arena, the Panthers. Then they go into Philadelphia, lose 4-3 in their next game. And Paul Maurice says afterwards they didn't even need to wear equipment the last 2 games. The very next night, Tuesday night, the Panthers go into New Jersey and win in a shootout 2-1. Talk about Sunshine State coaches calling out their players publicly. We kind of got a snicker out of that because we watched that Panthers game, didn't we, at Philadelphia?
I didn't think it was too bad at first. I really felt like the Panthers probably should have won that game. But again, that's the way it goes. What I would be more concerned about, and I'm sure Paul Maurice is more concerned about, is why they're actually losing these games. Beating New Jersey in a shootout is not exactly cause for celebration when you just lost how many games that you probably should have won. When Boston was here, everybody's like, oh, we should probably win this one. I'm like, dude, you just never know. So yeah, Paul Maurice is probably cracking jokes, but inside he's probably going, okay, this is the time I got to start figuring out what do we have to do to make this kind of click again.
Well, I think I specifically read to you or played to you the clip of Paul Maurice saying we didn't even need to wear equipment, and you saw the exact same thing. Remember Sam Reinhart's goal? He dipsy-doodled through the entire Philadelphia team to score shorthanded. And we're like, this is the perfect type of game for Sam Reinhart.
Yeah, because what I said to you was, this is a perfect example of the way penalties are called now is why Sam Reinhart was able to do that. There was 2 defenders that couldn't even touch him or they would have gotten a penalty. 20 years ago, he would have been destroyed. Somebody would have pulled him down. Somebody would have hauled him down. Maybe they would have called a penalty. Maybe not. But it's changed the evolution of the game and the way that it's flowing defensively because either one of those guys touched him, they would have got a penalty. Facts.
One more thing before we bring Bure1096 onto the set, and that is what I said to Sarina before we went there. What are you following right now? Because she has her info sources, I have my info sources, and they're different. What's your focus on NHL-wise right now?
I don't have any info sources. I literally don't. I don't get to spend all day I don't. I just sometimes see stuff on like TSN or whatever. But what I like is thinking about, okay, last night, Kyle Connor had like 3 goals, got a hat trick for Winnipeg. That automatically popped him up in the goals race or whatever you want to call it. But it just fascinates me when I look at certain things like a guy like Nate McKinnon. I mean, obviously we know how good he is. He's always been really good. He's got 15 goals, but he's got 55 assists. They've only played 45 games. He's got 70 points in 45 games. Nobody else is even close. Draisaitl's got like 64 or 5, something like that in 43 games. 64, I think, points. But, to have 55 assists at this point, 55 or 45
Well, he's on
games
pace for
this
like
season,
110
It's unbelievable, right?
assists alone,
Yeah.
let alone points.
Yeah, it's crazy to think just how good he is and what's going on there. And, you got guys like a guy like Rantanen. I talk about this every once in a while, but a guy like Rantanen wouldn't be in the top 5 in scoring if he wasn't playing with a McKinnon and whatever else. But it just shows you the power of some of these players. Like Draisaitl does not play with McDavid. And he's got the most goals. He's got 31 goals so far this year. Nobody else is even close.
Don't they split their time?
Yeah, they'll play together on the power play or at the end of the period or something.
Feels like almost like 50-50.
But regardless, it goes to show you, I feel like Reinhart is a better player because of Barkov and whatever else, depending on who they play with. But man, Draisaitl, to be honest, Draisaitl surprised me this year because last year at the end of the year, I was really not impressed and not a lot of Oiler fans were.
Turns out he was hurt though.
Well,
from what
sure,
we understand. So.
Of course, and that's never good, but he's really turned it on this year. He's just a horse because he's so strong on his skates. McKinnon is probably stronger on his skates. And so when you look at the guys, as you come down the top 5 scoring leaders, Nate McKinnon is a horse. Leon Draisaitl is a horse. I wouldn't consider Kucherov a horse, but he's pretty hard to knock off his skates. You got Rantanen and Marner. Well, Marner, he's not going to be in the top 5. He's just soft. But, it's guys like that's what I like to see. Those guys that are big and they're powerful that are leading the league in scoring. Not the soft guys like the Mitch Marners and, whatever else.
There you go. She's watching the point races. I don't know how much you're watching the team point totals and races. That's kind of what I'm watching more of. But there you go. Okay, now it's time. Bure1096, breaking Bob. Can we get some crowd applause, Ben?
Thank you, Ben.
Nick Fairbanks joining us, everybody, from the Locked On Panthers. What's going on, brother?
How you doing?
Good to see you. She hasn't scared you off, has she?
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
He did say that his wife is a pistol, so
we got to get her in here.
Yeah.
What's she into?
Detroit.
Oh, well, I actually have that on my list of teams.
I love that about her.
Yeah, I got you. It's not my first rodeo, Ben. Okay, Bure1096, the guy's been following the show, ours, pretty much since its inception. I appreciate you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Can you tell, we want to introduce you to our audience, if they don't know who you are, from Locked On Panthers, why you are Bure1096 and your Panthers fandom, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. So I was a Vancouver fan in the early 90s. Bure was the topic of that town. Then he got traded to Florida in the 90s, late 90s, and I've been with Florida ever since. So just quick short story.
No, you're good, but you haven't always lived here. So that's the one that people want to know.
From Chicago. So you'd think a Blackhawks fan, but unfortunately their marketing department wasn't really that great during the 90s. So,
Nor was the team, of course.
I've heard that.
Yes.
I've heard a lot of people say that between the 80s and the maybe 2000s, there was just a lull where the Blackhawks were just not really the team anyone cared about there.
Definitely not. I mean, even when they were good in the early 90s with Belfour, Roenick, and Amante, the owner thought that, not putting them on TV would draw people in. Well, that's not how technology works. So,
yeah, that's exactly. Someone else told me something very similar that's from Chicago, and it blew my mind. I'm like, this is an original 6 team. How does this happen? But interesting. How'd you become a Canucks fan?
Honestly, I watched a game on ESPN when I was like 3 or 4, to be honest, not to put an age on myself, but, and he was just the first thing I saw that was whipping through the neutral zone and everything in that speed. And it just grasped me. So.
Well, it's funny because when the Panthers announced their all-century team here a couple weeks ago, quarter-century team, somebody said, how's Bure not on the first team? At least he was on the second team. Would you have put him on the first team?
I'm biased, so yes. But at the same time, I can understand where it's the early 2000s where Florida probably was not where they are. They're obviously not where they are now. And you can't really argue against what Barkov, Huberdeau, and also Tkachuk have done for the franchise.
Disagree. Pavel Bure is one of the best Russian players to ever play the game of hockey. How can you not put him on that top team? I don't understand that. I don't care what Huberdeau did here. Bure's the best. Yes. He's probably the most talented player to ever put on a jersey here. I mean, I think, and I know I'm preaching to the choir.
Yeah, you're not looking for a fight, I hope.
Yeah, no, I feel very strongly because my cousin, she's a Canucks fan because she's a Pavel Bure and an Ed Jovanovski fan. She's just a Bure fan from the get. Yep. And when you really watch him, he's just so much better than everybody else. So much better. Oh, yeah.
Everybody on Florida when he was here, I mean, that's why he was putting up 58, 59 goals and leading the Richard Trophy and everything. And, the whole team was designed basically around him. So I don't know if you really see that anymore. I mean, you do have your superstars, the horses that you guys mentioned before, but it's more, in my opinion, more of a team game than what it used to be.
Yeah, well, actually, that's kind of what and you can jump in anytime, and I know you will. We got to get Mike Keenan on the show. He told me in an interview that he's around Florida. He was the coach then, right? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you love to have Mike Keenan in here? I'm not sure the Panthers would want to have him in here, but this is past owners. I don't think Vincent Viola would have a problem now. But he basically said that he was guaranteed a certain amount of salary for players by the owner, Cohen, and then he shows up for training camp and they trade Bure away. He's like, what are you doing? Keenan, right? You don't have a chance. And I don't think I know the fans don't see that, and the coach can't say it at the time. No. You can't, right? So I'm not sure what my point is on that, other than this team has been through a lot of crap, and you said you've been here 10 years.
Yeah.
You've seen the worst of it, or close to the worst of it?
Close. I mean, when he got traded here in 99 and then left in 2002, 2003 to the Rangers, those were the darker days. Like, they had the draft picks, they had Weiss, they had Horton, and Luongo, and then he was out the door, unfortunately. And you could just see that the barn was not filled at all. Nobody was interested. And on top of that, they couldn't win games. They would try to make a playoff push and try to sell tickets. It just wasn't happening. So now, you go into the 2010s, you bring in Dale Talon, who I give a lot of credit to for what's happening right now, not from a player personnel, but more or less to kind of change the way that the organization was looked at. He was able to bring in players and make a difference, and then try to at least make it a hotbed down here. So that's, and then that kind of goes into, what Bill Zito's been able to actually turn this thing into, which is, it's the golden age of the Panthers right now.
I agree 100%. And going back to kind of some of the draft picks that you were talking about, couple things. I feel like a couple of them probably underachieved in the NHL. Mm-hmm. They were fantastic junior hockey players, incredible. And then it's just, like the Stephen Weiss and whatever. But I think in that time, where they missed the boat was they needed a superstar to bring the people in. Like you said, the rink was empty, and that's just kind of the way it was. We can't obviously go back, but I loved also what you said about Dale and how there was absolutely a reason. The Panthers don't win the Stanley Cup without a Dale Talon. Mm-hmm. The Panthers don't fill the rink without a Dale Talon, right? And it just filters in. Bill Zito looks like a genius, and not saying he's not, but from the decisions that were made before him, he walked into a beautiful situation.
I mean, Dale was the reason why they broke their playoff drought in 2011, if I'm dating it right. And then also, in 2016, there was just so much buzz around the team, and you could see that people wanted to come back. And then unfortunately there was a couple of decisions that were made following that, and then they brought him back. And then you could just see that, the fans and the organization, they were pushing to win. And they just needed the right pieces in place. And then that's why Zito was here. And he made the trade that he did for Tkachuk, which was an organizational change. And that's what they needed. So I just think that Dale, like he did in Chicago, set up the pieces. And then whoever came in was able to basically knock him down and win.
Yeah, I call it the bones. He drafted Huberdeau, who was traded for Tkachuk. So Dale's fingerprints are on that. And then he signed Bobrovsky, which people still...
Worth it.
Of course.
Worth it.
And he sat in that chair and said he'd do it again. Like, I don't understand.
This was also before the Panthers won.
Yep.
Right.
Like, Dale
he
was
set
like,
it all up.
I would do it again. I don't care how much heat I
when
took
he said
for
it. Yeah, exactly. So we love Dale, by the way.
No. Big
And,
fan.
so actually, before we talk about our weekend upcoming, because this would be the guy to ask, right? Any thoughts on Tampa for our friend Connor in Tampa, if he's still watching as a team?
I have to say, stick to what Sarina's saying about Tampa. I think a lot of people did not give them a lot of credit coming in because of the Stamkos drama, but I think they've taken another leap, and they're going to have a brand new identity that we're going to see probably towards the later end of the season into the playoffs. So keep a watch out for them.
That word identity is really important because I said when this whole Stamkos thing went down, because we talked about it a lot, and I'm like, no, everybody's just assuming Nashville's going to be good. You can't put a lot of superstars on a team and expect them to be good, right? And look at them. And so, but Tampa really didn't lose a lot of other players. They still have those core guys there. And that's why I think that they're doing well. I think they're doing as expected, or as they should be, as some people should expect them to do. I think they're a great team.
No, they are. They have all the pieces right now, and I think they're definitely, their defense is much better than what it was last year. I mean, the McDonough acquisition, or reacquisition, I should say, has paid huge dividends for them. And then, you have Vasilevsky, who, is always going to bring his A game anywhere he can. Plus, with the departure of Stamkos, you have other guys that can step into another role, get more playing time, and actually show their worth. And, you wouldn't have that if he signed a contract that, they were trying to get him to sign to. So, I mean, maybe there was, a crystal ball that maybe they had that they kind of knew, and they just kind of were like, we want to go in this different direction, and it's better for the franchise.
Yeah. Well, it's just, with Connor in Tampa, he watches every show. We talked about Stamkos every freaking show in the fall. It's not like we don't talk about them. And to be honest, we sit back right now, what she says with Nashville, they're third worst in the NHL record-wise. It looks like they might be coming back a little bit, but Stammer's not really doing anything. And my point is, maybe the Lightning were right in that. Maybe they're right in healthy scratching Brayden Point. My point is, she hates the fake news and crap that goes around the game that we talk about in Canada all the time, right? You're like, why are we talking about this? Well, in Canada, that's all we do. That's all they talk about, right? Imagine being the Leafs. In July. So my
literally,
so
this,
Nick. If they had healthy scratched Mitch Marner, for whatever the reason, they would have talked about it for a frickin' month.
Correct. But the news came down through a tweet. That's a little, in my opinion, a little unprofessional. I don't know if we tweet, it's like, that's the point.
I think we're on the same page. Just took a while to get there.
I'd love to see it.
What's that?
Love to see it.
Yeah. It's wild to me, though. I don't know why. Anyway, did you guys see that just this week, I think it was, where Connor Bedard came the 10th fastest player to hit 100 points? Did you see that?
Who was the fastest?
What do you mean?
Wayne Gretzky, 61 games. Come on.
That was the fastest.
I know. I'm joking.
It's just think about that for 1 second. 100 points in 61 games.
I got the list here.
Yeah. Well, it's mostly Canadians and a couple Swedes, I think. No, it's Brian Bellows is on that list, and there's another American, Brian Leach, I think.
Brian Bellows, is he American?
Yeah.
Okay. You guys
Somebody
talk
else.
amongst yourselves.
Yeah.
I'll find it here.
But it's like, it's crazy to think that we're in a situation right now, and I'll probably be in my grave for about 3 weeks if this happens. But Ovechkin potentially becoming this, to even think about the possibility of that, with the fact that Wayne had 92 goals in one season. What? Imagine if he would have played as long as Ovi, or been as Ovi's still effective though. I don't want to take anything away from him, but
I think this season, more or less than last season, they have the depth now, and they have a bunch of players basically who can, take on more of the brunt instead of him trying to do all the heavy lifting, like with Oshie, Carlson, and now they have goaltending. Thompson came over from Vegas and has really provided, a big boost to that team. So he doesn't really have to really worry about, I would say defense so much like he used to when he was younger. But now that, he's won a cup and he's going for that record, he can sit in his office or just do empty netters right now, unfortunately. And I know he doesn't want to do it that way, but at the same time, if he's on the ice for it, then it works.
it was just like last year when Washington was here, we're like, we're going to go to the game. This might be the last time we see Ovi. And I was like, is he 95 years old? He was terrible. He just phoned it in every shift. And I'm like, if this guy breaks Wayne's record, I will cut someone. It was bad. But this year, he's actually been trying.
Yep. And he's in shape. Okay, here's the list. Connor Bedard hit 100 points in 112 games. It's like the 12th fastest to do it. So her guy, Wayne Gretzky, did it the fastest in 61 games. Wayne Gretzky hit 61. You want the rest of the list?
Why not?
Mario Lemieux, 73 games. Dale Hawerchuk, 74. Sidney Crosby, 80. Ron Francis, 85. Steve Yzerman? I'm joking. Yzerman, 80. That's a Bill Clinton reference there. Jimmy Carson, not to be confused with Johnny Carson, 96 points. Not many would have had him in that list.
No, I wouldn't.
Sylvain Turgeon, the Hall of Famer. Bullshit. Phil Housley.
Yeah, Phil Housley.
106 games. Brian Bellows, 108. And Connor Bedard, 112, as my guy Chris from the Bronx likes to call him, Connor Bedard.
Let's just think for a second about all of these numbers. Phil Housley was a defenseman, for God's sake.
Yeah.
This is insanity.
Different game, different time, but there's no hitting now. I can't imagine what those guys would have put up now.
I can't even imagine.
So speaking of Connor Bedard, we're going to Chicago this weekend. Birthday present from this beautiful lady to me. 2 games, Carolina and Vegas. You two talk about it. She's already talked to Dale Talon about where to go, but we feel like you might be the guy to ask.
I literally was like, Dale, listen, Rod doesn't know yet, so don't say anything. But where should we get pizza? And he's like, Gino's East. He's like, is that the place?
No, I don't agree.
Oh!
Okay.
You want to go to Lou Malnati's.
Okay, I've heard that Gino's is better, though. A lot of reviews I was reading. Okay, you know what? We have time to try both.
Okay.
Lou Malnati's.
Lou Malnati's, yep.
Yep, Gino's East we're going. He said Giordano's is okay, too. It's pretty decent.
It depends on what kind of sandwich you want, but yeah, they're. I think their beef's really good.
Beef sandwich?
Yep.
Ooh, Roddy likes that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Give me some beef. Born and raised on it. Okay, well, what else? What else do we need to do in Chicago? She says it's going to be hella cold up there.
Take a couple windbreakers with you, and then get a parka. I would say if you're
Wear it
downtown.
underneath,
Okay, yes, exactly.
Yeah, we got it.
I mean, from Canada, I would hope so.
No, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. I had to go buy one before a hockey game one night. I drove over to Sawgrass Mills, had to buy a jacket. Because I don't have a jacket for the rink. It's so cold in there. So I bought him one for his birthday, too, because I'm like, we're going to Chicago. You're going to need a wool jacket.
Definitely will. And the stadium is actually, it's a little bit on the west side of the city. So definitely try to get, good parking. Get there a little bit early. I know you guys probably will, so you guys can actually take in the stadium and everything. But
we're going to Uber it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then on top of that, there's different parts of the city you guys can see. You guys can go see Wrigley if you guys haven't. That's a staple. I'm not a Cubs fan. I never will be, unfortunately. You guys can go see Rate Field that they just named it for the Sox. I know it's on the south side and it gets a bad rap, but literally it's a beautiful field. And then on top of that, it just depends on what kind of, like if you guys are into art or if you guys are into, that kind of thing. They do have the Chicago Art Museum. They have the Science Museum. They have one of the big, I like to call it the big globe at the planetarium, which is beautiful.
She wants to take me up on a tower.
Yeah.
Well, I was like, do you want to go up the Willis Tower?
Yeah.
He's like, do you? I'm like, not particularly, because that scares the shit out of me. But
I'd be okay if we don't.
I would go.
Yeah. You guys get to stand on a window outside?
That will not happen. That will not.
It's going to be cold. I'll be okay with eating pizza in the hotel and going to hockey games. That's really kind of down your alley, too.
We're pretty close to the Bean.
Perfect.
Yeah, so we'll go over to the Bean. It's supposed to be like 33 degrees one day and like 4 degrees the next day. And by the way, guys, I'm talking Fahrenheit here. That is cold. That is cold.
This is a birthday gift. Thank you. I'll thank you now.
Yeah, when we're walking in the cold.
Yeah, by the way, when the Blackhawks were through here last year, and they haven't been here yet this year.
No.
But there was a lot of Bedard fans there. Here at Sunrise. I took their picture, guys in Bedard's jerseys and so forth. Have you watched many of Chicago's games?
I do follow along just because, I have a lot of friends at home that talk about them and I want to be in the
What
know.
are they saying about the Blackhawks right now?
They're going to be good in a year, 2 years.
Oh, my God. Are they drunk? Are they on crack?
They have the Cubs syndrome. It's always, hey, there's always next year.
God. They're so bad.
I know. And, you know, I was actually kind of embarrassed when Florida went there, and I think it was their fourth line, who I nicknamed like the slowest line in hockey, scored on them. Like, what are we doing? I just think that right now they're trying to surround him with talent, but I don't know if anybody's biting. And I think it came out today about Taylor Hall, to be honest with you guys, that he doesn't know if he's going to be able to re-sign there and that he might be trade bait at the trade deadline.
He's a tough one. That poor guy, I mean, he was an Oiler. He just, there's something, he's just like snake bitten somehow. There's just something, he has a good start somewhere he goes, then he gets injured, and I feel terrible for him because he is a hell of a hockey player. He was, you know, when he was younger, and that poor guy. I always just hope the best for him every time he goes somewhere.
Can we say this, though, about the teams? Like, I look at Chicago, and they're awful, and I feel bad for their fans, especially now people are paying more for tickets than they ever have.
I don't.
Yeah, well, 3 Stanley Cups in a decade.
So the reason why I don't is because, again, it comes with that territory where they were not on in the 80s or 90s. And then all of a sudden you have these fans that show up and say, oh, I've been a fan since blah, 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 blah.
Like you mean here?
Yes.
Yeah. It literally.
Yes.
It's no offense, guys.
It's annoying.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, I'm not talking bad about Panthers fans or like Chicago fans in general, but it just, you didn't know about the team. You were not hockey fans. You actually despised hockey as a sport because, listen, football, baseball was the king in Chicago, and basketball during the 90s, obviously. But no, I honestly don't feel bad for them. They went through a lot of things to win those cups, and on top of that, I think the organization probably had to go through a lot of things over the last 10 years that they needed to clean up. So, not to bring that to light, but I think they just needed to.
It's all good. Hey, we brought you on for your opinion. There's no wrong answer here. But I guess my point is here with the Panthers, I don't know how long they'll be good. They've been in 2 straight cups. I think they're going to be good for a while. Like, I'm talking at least 4 or 5 years. I do. Like in the playoffs. You?
I don't see a downfall coming. I feel like they're going to be like Tampa, where they, even if they don't win or not win, whatever, going to stay steady. We were talking about this last episode or maybe the one before. We're like, do you ever remember was Colorado ever bad? And we were like, no, we really don't.
I guess when Roy was, even when he got fired, they were making the playoffs.
Yeah. Like they have just been
fired because he's a kook.
So I don't see.
I love him. So
how dare you?
I'm sorry.
Well,
Patrick
they did get McKinnon too. I mean, that was that whole Barkov and McKinnon draft there that they got the first overall. So I think that one season they were, and then right after they got McKinnon, that's when.
Yeah, they've just never been.
Shows you
bad.
what stars will do, though.
Exactly.
Right. Well, and I had this written on another page. I wanted to ask you both this before we roll. What's the biggest task for Paul Maurice right now in terms of keeping them hungry? Because for his 25 years, whatever his coaching in the NHL, it was always to get to the top of the mountain as a team, and then he did. Mm-hmm. How difficult is? I'm sure he's enjoying the challenge, but what's his biggest challenge this year, do you think?
I think it's hard to say. If I had to look at it like right now, what's his biggest challenge right now? I would say trying to figure out what the disconnect is and why they're losing games they shouldn't, like I said before. Being up 2-0 on Philly and losing to Boston. And Boston, bless their hearts, but man, they're rough to watch. I watched Edmonton play them. It was like playing a bunch of teenagers. It was so bad. But I said this to Rod, and I think that this is, and I'm getting to a point about Paul Maurice here. I feel like the Rangers are suffering because Panarin's not performing. I feel like the Bruins are suffering because Pasternak's not performing. The difference is here, Paul Maurice knows that Barkov is not going to be that guy. He's never going to be that guy that phones it in. And I don't want to say he's a Russian, but essentially, it's the mentality. It's like the Bobrovskys and the Vasilevskys. They just don't phone it in, ever. There's a huge difference. Although Panarin and Pasternak, like, what's the problem there, right? But it's just, you have a guy like Barkov. You get a guy like Barkov. I've never felt that Barkov he's played a lot better at certain times than not. But Panarin is extremely talented. And it's just flat.
For me, if I may answer my own question, it's keeping them interested. because they just seem bored at times in games. And it's hard to play the way they played to win the Stanley Cup. That's be in your face, physical. It's not fun. It's hard, and to do it for 82 games is almost impossible.
So that's actually, I sent in a question a couple shows ago asking, like, what do you guys think, the Panthers need to do? Do you think they're phoning in games and everything? And I think it has to do with interest, number one. Two, I also think they're tired. With
They
the
looked tired the other night.
with the amount of games they played the last 2 seasons, and on top of that, you now have the Four Nations coming up, and you have 8 players from your team who you depend on are going to be playing. I think they're just trying to basically get through the dog days right now, get in position, and then be able to get healthy, and then maybe make a move to then jump. But that's just my 2 cents on that. I think they're tired.
There's no way as an athlete that you can physically perform at your best, mentally perform at your best, and emotionally perform at your best all the time.
100%.
Doesn't work like that. And when you have a whole team, the Panthers have played just as many games as the Oilers and just about as many games as it just catches up though. It catches up at different times. Oilers are on a roll. Is it going to catch up to them? It might. And just like we talked about last year, Paul Maurice, it's like, take this time now, figure out where the disconnect is. He was like, everybody calm down.
Yeah, relax.
Yeah. So I think that's probably the same viewpoint he's got right now. Let's just take this time. And I do agree with you. I think you're right. There's this Four Nations thing. There's the trade deadline. There's all these things that are kind of sitting there that are like, let's just get past this.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah. Last thing I want to add to it is I honestly think also that you have a bunch of these players and everything, and, they gave up a lot in the offseason on the defensive side. I think they're really trying to figure out what they're doing on the back end there. I mean, they're losing these leads, as you guys say, and, they're losing these games that they wouldn't normally. And I think they're just trying to figure out who's going to be on their assignments, who's playing where, and do they have the players big enough to even go through another gauntlet again? And in my opinion, I don't know right now.
That's fair. Like we talk about guys like Reinhart, like he just around there. Is he good defensively? Not really. Like he's not, but that's not his style. You know what I mean? But like you said, it's like if we have, if the Panthers are rough defensively, like what are you going to do? Like Paul Maurice said, I think it was after that Vancouver game. He's like, we were horrible defensively.
We're giving the puck away.
Yeah.
They did it just the other night again. He's like, we gave the puck away more than we had it.
Yeah,
in the second
that was the Philly game, I believe. And last night they locked it down. They played the neutral zone trap, and they played very well
after
in that.
Maurice bit their ass.
Correct.
But also
it's
too, I feel New Jersey came in here 2 nights in a row and beat them both games, and they were like, "Hold on, we're going to play a different style." We just got beaten both nights in a row. You just change your style. You change. New Jersey is good, but they're young. They don't have the same experience that the Panthers can go, okay, let's change this up a little bit and beat them.
Maurice said that was rock bottom.
When they lost those games?
Those 2 games.
Did he?
Back to back. Yeah. I mean,
He said that was rock bottom for them.
I would agree.
All right. Can we go to the wide shot, Ben?
Ben sleeping.
Great job, man.
Thank you.
Great job. We
Thanks
do it
for
again?
having me.
All right. We do it again?
Yeah. Love it.
Bure1096, Nick Fairbanks from the Locked On Panthers podcast. And Ben Castro is the lovely and talented producer. He's available on dating apps. Look him up. See you next week. Cats and Bolts.